Hello and welcome to Sequana H1 2022 financial results and business update. Please note this call is being recorded, and for the duration of the call, your lines will be on listen only. However, you'll have the opportunity to ask questions. This can be done by pressing star 1 on your telephone keypad to register your question. If you require assistance at any point, please press star 0 and you will be connected to an operator. I will now hand over to your host, Ian Crosby, CEO, to begin today's conference. Thank you.
Hey, thank you very much, and good afternoon or good morning to everyone on the call. Thank you very much for joining for Sequana Medical's first half financial results and business update. Joining me on the call today is Kirsten, our CFO, and she'll be talking through the financials later on. First of all, the very important disclaimers, and then on to the summary. I think the key message from the results we put out today is it pulls together the great progress that we made through the course of the first half and that we've already announced. I would say there is nothing really changes here from what we have discussed previously, so this really pulls together a summary of what has been another really great period for the company. All our focus now is really at the company on driving Alpha Pump towards the North American commercial market, and on DSR driving towards our first US study, the Mojave phase 1b/2a study that we have planned for first half of next year. So first of all, Alpha Pump. As you know, key upcoming milestone there is reporting the primary endpoint of the Poseidon study. That is on track for Q4 of this year. Looking back a little, we had the very nice interim analysis on survival of the rolling cohort, 70% at 1 year, so very, very proud of that. And at the corporate level, we were able to tick off Mdr Certification. That's a huge achievement for the company, and I'm sure you're all very well aware of the challenges so many companies are having out there. So as one of the first companies to get a Class 3 active implantable device approved here in Europe, or certified here in Europe, certified under MDR, we are very proud of that achievement there. In terms of DSR, the second program here, we believe it's very clear from the clinical evidence that we have from the Red Desert and Mojave study that we now have a disease-modifying heart failure drug therapy within our very exciting DSR program. Looking at all of the data we have from those studies, what was really exciting was no congestion-related rehospitalizations during the follow-up. You've heard us talking about this before, but these patients, these acute decompensated heart failure patients, they are frequently readmitted. We see 1 in 4 of these patients readmitted to hospital within 30 days of discharge here. So to have no of this type of rehospitalizations, a great progress and validation for what we are doing here. Secondly, looking at all the clinical signs pulling together, whether it is the reduction in NT-proBNP or the improvement in NIA class or the dramatic reduction in loop diuretic dosing, you can pull those together into a coherent picture, which is the Seattle heart failure model, and that delivers a 75% reduction in predicted 1-year mortality. As you know, this is a 6-patient group, so if this data carries through to an approved product, then that would absolutely be dramatic and stunning in the treatment of this poorly looked after patient group. All of the preparations are going ahead for the IND filing for the Mojave study, both on the drug side, but also on the clinical side too. And we're looking forward to kicking this study off in the first half of next year. In terms of financials, liquidity was strong at the end of June, and now we have cash runway into third quarter of next year as a result of that equity placement in Q1, as well as the Creos 10 million loan that we announced in the post-close period there. So another great period for us, another great period of delivery and living up to our expectations here. Okay, just going into a little bit more detail on the Poseidon data planning for Q4. As you know, all of the patients have been implanted, both 29 patients in the roll-in and 40 patients in the pivotal cohorts here. So given that the timetable is set, nothing can get in our way of the 6-month visits coming in by the end of the third quarter this year, and then we have to do the data cleanup, etc. But given the progress we're making, we feel very good about being on track for the fourth quarter delivery here. As we've announced before, we feel very good about the data that we intend to that will be announced here, based upon the interim analysis of the roll-in cohort that we have done before. We believe that really de-risks the clinical side here. In terms of efficacy, we outperformed the primary endpoint requirements as defined for the pivotal cohort. Safety was in line with expectations. For quality of life, we delivered a clinically important quality of life, and we maintained that even out to 12 months post-implantation. So it came in quickly, it was seen at 1 month, and it was maintained right through to 12 months, which is as far as we had followed the patient at that time for. Then we did this survival analysis that we announced earlier this year. We're looking at this very sick patient group. We're very pleased to see 70% survival at 12 months. We believe this compares very favorably with the literature which is cited in the AASLD practice guidelines, American Association for Study of Liver Disease, so kind of the prime authority here. In those guidelines, they talk about a 50% survival rate at 12 months for refractory ascites patients from diagnosis. So we believe it's looking very good and positive. It's not powered for survival in this study, but look at the marketing message we believe we'll be able to put forward in terms of efficacy, safety, quality of life, and hopefully adding in this survival side too, so a strong message both for the physician side and the patient side too. So we will be planning, reporting in Q4, and then submitting the PMA in the second half of next year. All of this is now, as our attention is now turning in the organization, obviously the PMA submission is a big focus for us, but we're now starting to prepare for direct commercialization in the US. We are clear that this is the right strategic decision for us. We will have hands-on control of a very manageable specialty sales force that will enable us to tackle the 140 liver transplant centers in the United States. The way the guidelines are set up, if a patient decompensates, if a cirrhotic patient decompensates, starts producing ascites, is the major cause, then those patients are referred for a liver transplant. They get sent to one of these liver transplant centers. So in that way, we have a very efficient means of seeing all of this flow that is coming through. Either those patients we put on the transplant list, well, they'll be there for a year or two, where we can be a bridge to transplant, or for some reason these patients may not be eligible for a transplant, in which case these transplant physicians will be looking for this as a bridge, as a destination therapy instead. So whichever route they go, either on the transplant list or off the transplant list, we believe a very solid rationale for using the alpha pump, either to maintain their mental and physical condition, to make sure this very expensive and very scarce asset, a transplanted organ, goes to a good home, or for those patients not on the list and destination therapy, the doctor is able to offer them something and can't just send them home empty-handed. So we believe very efficient with that 50-person team of reps, clinical specialists, and corporate will be a very targeted way, a very efficient way of reaching this patient group. Just flipping over, recapping onto the heart failure side now, as we announced earlier on in the summer, Sahara continued to show strong data. In this study, we showed a safe, rapid, and effective decongestion. Remember, these patients are diuretic resistant. They were all on 250 or 300 milligrams a day of diuretics. Yet, we were able to shift 15 pounds of fluid within a week of treatment for these patients. So a highly dramatic effect and treatment benefit here. So these patients have not been responding to the drug therapy, and we were able to shift that fluid and get them back to euvolemia, and euvolemia is the correct fluid status. By treating them for those 3 to 4 week period, there were clear improvements in cardiorenal health, both the heart, as measured by natriuretic peptides, NT-proBNP, and also the renal health in terms of a stable eGFR and stable creatinine here. Usually, when you are drying out patients, taking out that much fluid, you expect to see a dramatic decline in renal function, a strong rise in creatinine as the kidney battles against this. But in this case, we maintained those clear validated biomarkers demonstrating we had a clear improvement in cardiorenal health. As we discussed earlier, a long and lasting reduction in the need for diuretic drugs. By giving the kidney this break from these terrible loop diuretics, the kidney was able to heal and reset itself. And when the DSR therapy is finished, these patients started off needing minimal levels of loop diuretic drugs. And we were surprised and positively shocked to see how long that benefit lasted. As we showed earlier this year, in Red Desert, we were seeing a benefit out even at 20 to 23 months post end of study. And in Sahara, we were seeing a benefit even out to 11 months post end of therapy. So we are confident as we move forward that 3 to 4 weeks of intensive DSR therapy is going to give us, or give these patients, 6 to 12 months of important clinical benefit here. This is a breakthrough therapy, we believe, which tackles the key underlying problem of sodium overload in these patients for whom diuretics are no longer effective, and in doing so becomes a clear disease-modifying drug therapy for heart failure. Okay, just preempting myself there. When you look at the, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, with this disease-modifying benefit comes this dramatic fall in rehospitalization, this dramatic reduction in predicted mortality at 1 year there, and we believe this will translate into clear financial benefits and incentives to adoption here. These patients are expensive for hospitalization. Each hospitalization is seen to cost about $13,000. If these patients are in hospital 3 times a year, that alone could deliver savings of around $40,000. Savings that we can share in with the healthcare system for DSR therapy, even before you see the value of increasing survival in these patients. As you know, survival is a highly valued and sought after goal for new therapeutics in the United States, so we believe it's a valuable asset here, and as a drug therapy, we believe we'll be able to take a strong share of that. And that is why we are pushing ahead from our DSR 1.0, our first generation drug, through to DSR 2.0, our second generation drug, that proprietary combination of sodium-free dextrose and icodextrin. There's never been a version of icodextrin available on this planet without sodium, and therefore it is not possible to generically substitute this product. A pharmacy cannot create this, so we believe this puts us in a very strong position for realizing the value of this asset in the marketplace moving forward. We believe that we will have a better therapeutic profile. DSR 2.0 is expected to be much easier to use, managing the dosing and managing these patients compared to 1.0. We believe we have a better safety profile here with lower absolute levels of dextrose in the solution, and we are making great progress with both the CMC and also the animal work here to put us in place for starting Mojave first half of next year. And on that progress here, we intend to kick off the Sahara extension, so the Sahara study, but now using 2.0. We plan to treat patients using DSR 2.0 for the first time in the remainder of this year. That will give us first insights here into use of DSR 2.0. That will go into the IND filing with FDA, but also will help us de-risk and inform the dosing for Mojave going forward. So very valuable work there. Obviously, putting all the experience we have here from Red Desert, Sahara, the Sahara extension, the animal work we're doing here, the CMC work we're doing here, all pulling that together into the IND, and then moving ahead with Mojave in first half of next year as planned. So that's very strong progress on heart failure there too. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Kirsten to talk about the financials.
Thank you, Ian, and good afternoon to you all. So revenue, as you could see, increased as a result of the resumed European activities as the COVID impact declined for us. The operating expenses increased by 19% to 13.6 million euros, mainly due to the preparations for the submissions for marketing approval of the alpha pump in the US and Canada, and the preclinical and clinical development work for our DSR therapy for heart failure. This brings the net loss for the first half year 22 to 14.9 million euros. End of June, as Ian mentioned, our cash position was 23.8 million euros, and including the subsequent events, so the 10 million raise loan facility with Creus Capital, extends our cash runway into Q3, 23. With this, I hand it over back to you, Ian.
Great. Hey, thanks, Kirsten. Only other things to really comment on are you'll see the augmentation of the board. You know we have an increasing focus on the United States moving forward. Alpha Pump in the US is where we believe there'll be strong value generation. And to help us with that process of preparing for that launch and execute that launch, we brought on two excellent US healthcare executives. Doug Kors, a long history of medtech leadership there, both at American Medical Systems, Tournier, SpineTech, and now Responsive Arthroscopy. So a broad range of experience there. And then secondly, Alex Clyde, SVP of Global Health Economics, Policy and Reimbursement at Medtronic. As you can imagine, that's one of our key focuses moving forward. And to be able to secure someone of that caliber and experience is a real demonstration of the potential they see here of the Alpha Pump in the United States. So we welcome them both to the board. They've already provided excellent contributions to the board meetings and our planning, and we look forward to benefiting from their experience moving forward. So just putting together in terms of milestones, just as we've described before here, end of this year, primary endpoint reporting for liver, and then FDA submission for the Alpha Pump second half of next year. On the heart failure side, top-line results of Sahara before year-end, and then kicking off Mojave in the first half of next year, reporting interim data second half of next year, and just outside of this picture, in the first half of 24, reporting the top-line data for that Mojave study. So very exciting to be seeing in US patients a randomized multi-center controlled study to really validate that exciting data we saw out of Sahara already. So with that, I'd like to wrap it up and open the floor to questions, please.
Thank you. As a reminder, if you'd like to ask a question on today's call, please press star 1 on your telephone keypad. To withdraw your question, please press star 2. The first question comes from the line of Valiant Campaign from Kempen. Please go ahead.
Hi, and good afternoon. Thank you for taking my call. A short question. For the upcoming Poseidon and Sahara readouts later this year, could you remind us what to expect and what scenarios do you consider a success or failure or in between? Thank you.
Great. Okay, so first of all, for Poseidon, the most important thing for Poseidon is that we meet the requirements for meeting our primary endpoints in the study so that we can go ahead and submit the PMA for marketing approval in the United States. So as you know, FDA set those 50% thresholds, 50% reduction in average therapeutic paracentesis, and a responder analysis, so 50% of patients having a 50% response there. Interim data we announced last year showed more than a 90% reduction in therapeutic paracentesis and all patients having a 50% reduction. So clearly at a minimum, we would want enough to exceed the primary endpoint thresholds. However, internally, we're more ambitious than that, so we would clearly be looking to be in line with the interim data we saw. So success for us would be consistent with what we saw in the interim data previously. Safety, as you know, this is a messy patient population. They are sick patients with, they are immunocompromised and they already had severe kidney disease. So we will be seeing safety incidents in here. As you know, high mortality as well, and ASLD is talking about that 50% rate. So we will see safety events, but we believe that safety will be sufficient for approval here too. So I think for liver, we should be looking for the same sort of reduction in paracentesis as we saw in the interim data. Safety to be in line with expectations here, and then quality of life. We'd like those benefits to be maintained as we saw before. Survival is not part of the endpoint here, so we won't be formally reporting that as to FDA, but we will be updating investors with it, obviously here, just to make sure we keep you fully in the picture. So that's on the liver side. For heart, what we would like to continue to see here is in these patients that we can, again, avoid rehospitalizations. Again, we can see that improvement in cardiorenal health, so reduction in NT-proBNP, about 30% is what we saw before. Maintaining renal health, so having a stable EGFR, and then diuretic dosing as we push out. In Sahara, can we see 12 months of benefit in these patients, so dramatic reduction in loop diuretic needs in these patients? As we mentioned before, we don't care in itself. Saving loop diuretics is not the objective here. They are cheap. They cost pennies, but they represent the health of the patient. If a patient does not need high doses of loop diuretics, the reason they don't is because they are fundamentally healthier, and that is what is key. So you should be looking for a maintenance of reduction in loop diuretic needs of, say, at least 80% reduction out to 12 months, which was around the range that we had we'd shown about 90%, but I would say at least 80% would be success. If we can maintain 90%, that would be very good too. So that gives you an idea of what we're looking for moving forward.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next question comes from the line of Jeroen van den Bossche from KBC Securities. Please go ahead.
Hey, Jan and Kristen, congratulations. Looks like some good progress over the last half year. Maybe did I understand correctly that you said that the DSR 2.0, you said it's that pharmacists can't make it? So does that mean that you guys have a composition of matter, IP, patent protection, and or also, let's say, some trade secrets surrounding the production of it? That's the first question.
You're absolutely right. We have granted composition of matter patents in both US and Europe here. So that protects us very robustly here. Those patents are also being prosecuted around the world, but as you may know, US and Europe are the key areas to start, and then it proceeds around the world. So we have strong protection through a broad range of these DSR drugs that will, in this sodium-free formulation, be used for heart failure. So we believe it's very hard for anyone else to come in at all in here, and so no one else can make it. And with that IP protection, it will keep others out of the market, we believe.
So when you say no one else can make it specifically, there are things that Sequana knows in the production that are basically hard to reproduce, if I understand correctly. So there's also some trade secret in the production of the.
Technically, somebody could go out and buy icodextrin, and someone can go out and buy dextrose and formulate it together. But if they did so, it wouldn't be an approved product. So you'd be buying it's not like you can take an existing pharmaceutical and dilute it down, and therefore you've got a safe drug to use, and all the pharmacy does is dilute it 10 to 1. That's not what you can do here. You literally have to go back to the API suppliers and mix all this up. And then if a doctor then wanted to use a product which is kind of self-formulated, they would be doing so in a way which is against our patent. So again, you've got IP protection there. We care about the 95 or 98% of the market. Who cares if 1 or 2% of doctors in the US for some crazy reason chose to try and do this and take on all of that risk themselves, as well as the pharmaceutical risk they were taking on and the safety risk they're taking on. They're taking on the IP risk as well here. We don't believe that's any material market there. No company able to go out and run clinical trials there with our labeling, because they couldn't make use of our label given the patent. So no one could afford their clinical studies. So we believe there isn't a way of no one can do generic substitution here and take advantage of our product or our label or our IP here. So it's an incredibly strong position because we're sodium free. How do you take a bag of Baxter icodextrin and suck the sodium out? It just isn't possible. If you could add it, that would be one thing, but we're trying to get people to take it out. So there's all sorts of theoretical ideas you could come up with, but in reality, we don't think it's any material impact on the market. And in fact, I think most people would just say we just have to go with the Sequana product here.
That makes sense. And maybe one follow-up question. Since you've been showing really, from the intermediate results, you've been showing really a true improvement in quality of life with liver ascites, and you now have a cohort in which you're actually showing additional data, i.e. survival. I mean, from 50% to 70%, that's no small feat. Do you think that will be ultimately something you will either investigate further through post-market surveillance, or is there any way, maybe the question I'm really going after is, can you monetize that really improvement in quality that you're providing to these patients?
Okay. Yeah, no, you're in a good point. We have to be innovative around a couple of things. I think we've spoken to many of you we've spoken to everyone in the market about the fact that there is a registry ongoing at the same time. The NACCEL Consortium, the North American Consortium for the Study of End-Stage Liver Disease. It's the great and the good of liver disease in North America. They are actually running a registry of about 1,000 patients with ascites. Out of that 1,000 patients, about a third are going to be comparable to the Poseidon patients here. We have an arrangement with that registry, because we're a sponsor here, that there will be a propensity-matched cohort there. So the registry organizers will take our patient profiles. We can't do it. They have to do it because it's their registry. And they will come up with a group of patients out of that third of their registry and say, these patients are comparable to the Poseidon patients, just like if we had a randomized control arm here. Obviously, it's not quite as good as randomized, but it's a pretty good because it's contemporary. There's no 5 or 10 year difference. This is happening exactly at the same time. And in that cohort, we can start looking at things like that reduction in paracentesis. We can start looking at comparative safety events. We can start looking at comparative quality of life, and we could potentially be looking at comparative survival here. It will not go, because it's not one of the endpoints for the study, it would not go in the FDA label. But, once we come to discussions with payers, once we come to discussions with clinicians, that is the sort of discussion we could have. And it's a very valid approach to do propensity matching from a contemporaneous group. So that might be a way we could do that in the near term. And then, Jeroen, as you were saying, post-marketing surveillance studies, absolutely. They just take a little bit more time, obviously, to report, but the registry should be giving us something, and that data will be coming out over the course of 23. So by the end of 23, by the time we're submitting our PMA there, ahead of the time that we would be coming to the market for reimbursement, we believe we would have this propensity match data that we could be using here. So is that clear, Jeroen, how we believe we could use that data to help us here?
Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
We currently have no questions coming through. As a final reminder, if you'd like to ask a question, please press star 1. There are no further questions. I will hand back to your host.
Hey, thank you very much. So thank you very much, everybody, for taking the time. We appreciate your attention. We appreciate your diligent following of us here. We look forward to another very productive period for the company. As you know, we've got a stream of clinical data planned for the rest of this year. So we will keep you obviously well informed, and we look forward to reporting good news over the rest of this year and moving into next year as well, and driving towards that commercial launch for Alpha Pump in the United States, and driving towards the results of that phase 2A data for DSR in the United States. So thank you very much, everybody. And if you need to get hold of us, you know where to find us. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining today's call. You may now disconnect. Hi, just to let you know, you're in the private speaker area now.
Okay, good. Thanks for organizing, for coordinating it.
Thank you.